A lot of us see today's crossovers and SUVs as nothing more than essential family transportation, shuttling you, your spouse, your kids, and all applicable items that go with them back and forth between work, school, sporting events, and so on. But just suppose you're that same family person, but you have a sense of adventure at the same time. You want to experience life in the rawest form you possibly can. Well, you're not going to go off in the middle of the wilderness nor bust down the biggest trails in an ordinary family vehicle. But with the right car, or truck in this case, that sense of adventure you so desperately seek can happen anywhere, anytime. And that's because today I've got the keys to the 2024 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro. Already a mouthful to start things off, but then again, this is one heck of a vehicle to talk about. And I'm not so much talking about the fact that it's absolutely gigantic. I'm talking about it is one very, very pricey truck, especially if you're considering a much larger SUV for you and your family. The one I'm sitting in right now, options added in, is over $83,000. And there's no easy way for me to say that. But if my experiences in its cousin, the Tundra TRD Pro, are anything to go by, as we set off from this little parking lot here, I have a feeling we're going to be in for one pretty sizable mixed bag of emotions here. But I think it gives me another talking point, which is I see so many people taking these massive over-the-top SUVs that are more suited for off-roading and just using them every day. So I've only had this truck in my care for about a day or two at this point, and I've already realized that being outfitted for the off-road does give it actually some pretty sizable benefits on-road. The only one that's not so beneficial is fuel economy. Because even though I've got a 3.4 liter twin turbocharged V6, a 10-speed automatic transmission, and of course some hybrid max wizardry, unfortunately, I will only be able to average 22 miles per gallon on the highway on this truck's best day. And already, just within the first day or so, I have gone through about a quarter tank of gas, just driving from here to work, which is about 15 minutes away, and back. So she's definitely a thirsty girl, and I'm looking at the dash right now and I'm seeing about 10.5 miles per gallon. So yeah, you better be ready to not only shell out when you go to buy one of these, should you think that paying over 80 grand for something like this is worth it, but you better be ready to pay when it comes to being at the pump. But performance and all that stuff aside, even though I know there's well over 400 horsepower and well in excess of 500 foot-pounds of torque under my right foot, I don't feel the necessity to use that on the public road. This thing makes a great noise. It's got a TRD exhaust on it, which adds that nice little extra burble when you need it, even though some of that sound is synthesized, unfortunately. But at the same time, with the TRD suspension combined with the Fox Racing shocks, this thing just floats down the road. I mean, I guess it should, like I said, weighing over 3 tons, need I reiterate, but it's actually not as, I guess, obnoxious as you might think. The only thing that would befit that category is from looking out over the hood and just realizing I'm dead center in the middle of my lane and I'm looking off to the right edge of the hood, and it's like, am I really in my lane? Am I really dead center? I mean, it doesn't feel like it. There's no getting away from the fact this thing is a monster out on the road. You know, this truck is always full of surprises. Like I said, I've only driven it for a day or so, but This one actually, as I found out, has the TRD performance air filters under the hood as well. So it kind of embellishes that turbo noise a little bit more, and you don't even need to bury it. You just get that, like, almost sounds like someone's sucking through a straw, but you get that nice little whistle of the turbos as you start to accelerate. Starting to kind of tell me, hey, you know, I got all this power and torque, and yeah, I may weigh 3 tons, but, you know, I could still make you think you're in something a little more exciting. But once you finally settle into the drive and you get comfy in these incredibly soft seats here in the front, it just feels a little more docile. And like I said, it doesn't feel small, but it just feels relaxed. And the only thing that's starting to bug me a little bit is the roar from those off-road ready tires that I'm sure I'll touch on a little bit later. But comfort-wise, it feels exactly the same as the Sequoia Capstone that I drove a couple years ago. I mean, okay, sure, that one's got air suspension, that one's got all kinds of like luxury items in it, but for an off-road ready full-size SUV, this is just such a nice, comfortable place to be. You know, I mean, I know there's all that power under my right foot, so why don't I try something? I'm gonna put this thing up into sport mode and just see what she really feels like. I've never actually tried it in one of these before. Let's try that now. Okay. Oh yeah. She definitely gets down the road, no question about that. Watching that speedometer climb, whoo, I am so glad there are no cops or state troopers in the area because, yeah, that was, whew. Nevertheless, though, it's not like a shove you back in the seat kind of speed. It's just a nice, relaxed, just surge of power as you put your foot down. But then again, taking off from a dead stop with that much power and torque, yeah. She moves. No other way to say it. She moves. Now, ever since the Sequoia came out back in 2001 as the first ever full-size SUV to be built by a Japanese automaker, it has always had one distinct characteristic that it has carried throughout every single one of its generations, which is it is so heavily based on the Toyota Tundra pickup truck that to the untrained eye, especially looking at it directly nose on, you would almost never know that you're looking at either a gargantuan family SUV or a full-size pickup truck. But whether it's the Tundra or the Sequoia, there's always one thing that I have loved personally about both of them, and that is the TRD Pro variation like we have here, because there's just so much aggression going on here that it shows Toyota spared no expense making sure this thing is properly off-road ready. And it starts with the grille, not just the sheer size of the thing, but the heritage of it. I love the Toyota name spelt out across the top in favor of just their standard little oval badge. And if you think just the size of the grille is big, look at this. I can fit my entire hand up to the wrist through just one of the huge inlets here inside of the grille itself. And I would feel sorry for any little creature or bird that may happen across the path of this freight train of an SUV. But also, it isn't just things like the grille that are big. I think Toyota went a little bit big and or crazy with the lighting on this truck. Not only do you have the government mandated amber LED lights not only going across the grille but over there on the fender, but you also have things like an LED light bar that goes across the middle here. And believe me, you almost don't even need those LED headlights up there, let alone your LED fog lights in the bottom to be able to see when you're out in the middle of nowhere. But aside from the light bar and the little fog lights in the bottom, again, the dead giveaway are things like the headlights showing this truck's Tundra base. So not only do the headlights look exactly the same, but they have all the same functions. You have auto high beam assist, they're LED everything, including those gorgeous LED daytime running lights, and also my favorite feature, those sequential LED turn signals. Now, if you're going to be paying over $80,000 for any vehicle, it not only has to look the part, but it has to have the technology to back it up. So you have things like the panoramic monitor. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, because this is the TRD Pro, it has trail cameras built into it as well. You have the active park assist going across the front bumper, replicated on the rear as you might expect. And also, you have Toyota's full safety sense system as standard equipment. Things like dynamic radar cruise control, forward collision warning, you name it, it is all festooned within the monstrous nose of this family truckster. Now, as if just looking at the face of this truck didn't make you think it's already large enough as it is, well, you haven't heard anything yet. This truck is over 17 feet long. It stands over 6 feet high, even taller if you option in things like the TRD roof rack that they've given me here for my test vehicle, for an extra $1,400, mind you. But in order to deal with something of this size and weight, you definitely need the right wheel and tire combo. And for the TRD Pro, well, the wheel size might seem a little bit small, but that's for a very specific reason, because these TRD Pro specific BBS forged matte black alloy wheels with their little red TRD center caps are wrapped in 285/65 series Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain tires, definitely capable enough for dealing with the rough stuff. And speaking of, look in between the tire and up in the wheel well here, and you start to get a glimpse of that TRD Fox Racing suspension combo that I was talking about earlier, with that little anodized red piece glaring back at you with yet another TRD logo on display. As if this thing didn't have enough of them already. Now, you heard me just say that the TRD Pro on either the Tundra or the Sequoia is my favorite of all of their trim levels. However, neither vehicle comes without a couple of little complaints from me, and I don't think it's down to so much a functional or necessary item. I think it's just down to a couple of things that could have been made a little bit better. The first thing are these little styling elements up here on the hood, which look like actual louvres. They've got the TRD Pro badge on them, which I don't even mind that, even though there's enough TRD badges on this truck as it is. It's the fact that I wish these things were made into actual heat extractors. As you can guess, there is no functionality to them at all. Considering there's a giant twin turbo hybridized powertrain under here, I think that might have been a little bit more of a forethought in Toyota's book. Also, one styling feature I do like are here around the wheel arches. They almost look like forged carbon, but they're not. They are textured plastic, and honestly, I think they just add that extra little bit of off-road aggression, dare I say that word again, back to the truck. But as you move back along the side, the other thing that, well, I didn't really like them at first, but I'm starting to kind of see the benefit of them, are the optional toe style mirrors. Now, as you can see, they are power folding, but the moment I open the truck up, you can see they are quite large, as if everything else about this truck wasn't big enough. But as I said, the benefits are there. They have the convex spotter mirror on the bottom. They have the work lights on the outer edge. You can actually push a button on the inside and they will stick out even further than they already do. And of course, they are integrated with blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. But going back to that unlocking and locking for a moment, well, that other complaint of mine comes back. And it's the small one that I've mentioned about, well, quite a few Toyotas recently, which is that it does not say Sequoia or TRD Pro on the back of the key. Another little nitpicky thing of mine, which honestly I could care less about at this point. But getting in or out, you have lock, unlock, power tailgate, panic, and that releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom of the fob itself. Now, if supposedly everything's working, getting in or out is the same as before. You want to lock it, just touch the edge of the handle. And then if you want to unlock it, just grab the handle and get in. And as if we needed any more emphasis on the fact that this truck is massive from every angle, well, just look at the rear end of this thing. It is a mammoth back here. But okay, it's not the tallest, the widest, or definitely the longest one in the group. But what I love back here is that Toyota did the right mix of modern and old school all in one area. Let me explain. The modern stuff is plentiful. The LED taillights with the sequential turn signals, just like you get in the front, love that touch. I love the black badging set up against the Terra metallic paintwork, which I actually didn't mention before. You have the park assist that I mentioned before as well, replicated on the front. But then the body on frame and old school flavor comes into its own when it comes to hauling things. I'm not just talking about in the cargo space. We'll get to that in a moment. This thing has a class 4 tow hitch, which means With 7 seats and 4-wheel drive in this spec right here, it will tow up to 9,000 pounds. No small feat, but definitely not the largest number I've ever heard of either. But my favorite thing is what happens when you push this little button right next to the Toyota badge. Suddenly just the rear sheet of glass opens up. I mean, I haven't seen something like that since the mid-2000s, have you? But if per se that's not enough and you really do need access to everything back here, like I said, you could pull the latch, you could use the key, or even better, just kick your foot underneath. Now, just because this thing doesn't say Tahoe or Escalade, Suburban, or even Land Cruiser on the back, doesn't mean that the Sequoia doesn't have that good bit of utility built into its formula. This is a sport utility vehicle after all. So just behind this third row where I'm sitting is 22.3 cubic feet of cargo volume. And it gets even better because what I'm sitting on is the adjustable parcel shelf. Now you can fold this thing up kind of like a divider and put your groceries back there so they don't move around a bit. Or if perhaps you got your groceries and your kids' backpacks from school with you, well, fold it in half, put it across the middle, and you can put groceries up top, backpacks underneath. But, you know, we're talking about a vehicle of quite a substantial size here, right? So push the buttons on the inside of the door frame, get the third row out of the way, and now you're looking at 49 cubic feet of cargo volume. That's about where most subcompact crossovers would run out of space with their rear seats down. But this is really a go big or go home vehicle, right? So fold down the third and the second row, and you're looking at 87 cubic feet of cargo volume. More than enough for, quite frankly, a lot of the bigger jobs out there. Now, like I said, it's not the biggest one in the game, but should you want to take most of your living room with you and possibly power some of those devices with this alternating current plug hidden here in the trunk as well, well, I'd say that's a distinct possibility that you could. Now, as if the external dimensions, cargo capacity, seating capacity, or let alone this truck's price tag aren't enough to give you the sense that Toyota's really trying to go big or go home here, well, just sit inside one of these, because I promise you, the first thing you notice is there is a vast amount of space in here. I'm over 6 feet tall, and I feel like an ant inside of here. Let alone, talking to you guys, I feel like I'm talking to you from the other end of a football field. Okay, well, probably not that far, but you kind of get what I'm talking about. But as much as everything is oversized for the majority of it, I will say there are some areas where I'm glad that Toyota kind of shrunk things down a little bit, if you will. And the main one is the steering wheel. I said the same thing when I drove the Tundra multiple times as well, but for the TRD Pro here, it's fully perforated, leather wrapped, heated, and I love all the little details like the TRD badge and the red stripe up at the top. But going back to the big theme, all of the buttons, I mean, you could not miss what everything does on this wheel. Multimedia functions, gauge cluster adjustments, your full Toyota safety sense, everything is right at the touch of your fingertips and so easily legible. And speaking of that gauge cluster, it's still one of my favorite styling elements in here, even though it's not the largest screen you can get on one of these. I love the layout of it. I love how you can adjust everything. I love how it changes between the different driving modes. It's just a nice little styling element that I think was kind of necessary considering how modern this truck has become over the years since it was introduced. But even more so than what's right here, let alone the assortment of buttons down by my left knee, you look in the middle, and I still say to this day that Toyota stole someone's laptop screen to put in here for the infotainment. That is a 14-inch screen pasted right in the upper part of the dash here. Now, although there's no keyboard and mouse to control everything, there are enough basically functions and everything inside of that system to let you know that Toyota means business. With the new Highlights telematics system, you have wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, the subscription-based navigation, the 360 camera with the trail functions. Literally anything you need is all right there. And while I enjoy the fact that the screen is much larger, I love the infotainment system inside of it and all of that stuff, I love the fact that even more so, standard on this TRD Pro, it comes with a 14-speaker JBL audio system. Now, we know Toyota and JBL have had a substantial partnership over the years, but what I like about this is that even though it doesn't have a bajillion speakers in here, rest assured, you could pretty much hold a party inside of this truck. Now, having a huge assortment of buttons plus 2 giant screens at your disposal might sound like enough for some, but not in a case of an over $80,000 truck like this. Your front half of your tri-zone climate control system, fully digitized with your heated and ventilated seat controls, which are standard on this one, by the way, and I would expect no less. But I love the styling elements too, like these sort of piano keys for your fan speed, temperature control, climate zones, and even more when you get down below all of that for your camera modes, your trailer braking control, your traction control, your locking rear diff. I also love the fact they've turned the Qi wireless charger vertical instead of flat or hidden away in some kind of compartment. But then right here in the middle is where the magic really happens. First of all, the TRD shifter, I love how it feels. It almost feels like that red stripe in the middle is kind of a rest for my middle finger, which is kind of humorous. But then back here, drive mode, tow haul, your crawl mode, multi-terrain select, and your four-wheel drive controls are right at the touch of your fingers. So if you're resting your hand, say, on this rather sizable center console, you could flick from 2 high, 4 low, or just explore the different terrain modes all at the same time. Now, should you find yourself being demoted to the rear seat, or at least this being your area of choice in which you like to sit, it's honestly not the most lavishly appointed place I could think of, but nor is it the worst one to sit in either, because first of all, I love the fact that the rear seats sit a lot higher compared to the front, so I have a full 360-degree view just sitting here in either one of these rear captain's chairs. First of all, if you like to get really comfortable, you can lean the seat back, thus having a boatload more headroom than I already do, even at around 6 feet tall. And speaking of, if you're worried that maybe your knees, if you're a bit of a taller person, might hit the back of the seat, worry no more. This truck is currently turned off, so the memory seat has scooted back as far as it can go to allow easy exit. But you can see I still have quite a bit of room for my knees to actually wiggle around back here. I would expect no less of a truck of this size, by the way. But you also have things like your rear climate controls, which are controlled for the second and third rows. You have a nice little armrest for each side. You've got your manual sunshades, which can kind of be a pain in the butt to try to get out of the door, or maybe that's just at least in this case. And you also have room to charge your phones, USB, USB-C, and even an extra alternating current plug, which is basically a replica of the one you have in the back. But let's say you really want to tailor your experience. Well, in this case, I think it's a little bit odd because you lean the seat back, put the armrest down, get the climate control set just right, and open this truck's optional panoramic sunroof. Which the only reason I didn't mention it earlier is because it is hampered by that optional TRD roof rack that I have on this test car as well. So your options really either are have the sunroof and no roof rack, or have the roof rack and no sunroof in my book. Because if you open that up, basically what you're staring at is a good chunk of the roof rack sitting over your head. So it really just is a case of either or. But as far as from where I'm sitting, I honestly would not mind being back here on the long haul. Of course, if you really want to upset your rear seat occupants, you can tell them to move their little rear ends out of the second row. And if they're tall like me, try to get them into the third row. Now, if I were to sit like this, I would be pretty content, right? I actually have some room to move my legs around until you have to move the second row back into place. And it takes a little bit of maneuvering because first of all, you're smashing toes, especially if you're taller like me. And then, yeah, you're basically crammed in like that. Now, of course, you could tap your second row passenger on the shoulder and say, hey, I need you to scoot the seat forward a little bit. But if you perhaps want to make yourself just the ever so slightest bit more comfortable, there's a little button back here. Well, that's at least a little bit better. Not so much for my legs, but still, you know, leaning the seat back is one thing. You know, having at least a little more maneuverability would be nice. I guess there is a little bit of comfort I can say, being that I'm not blinded thanks to the sunshades from outside. But if you really want to piss off the third row, reach inside here. There's a button right behind the second row seats. You push that, which I'm not going to do right now because I might break something. And that button you can actually use to fold the third row seats down. So you don't even need to go into the trunk in order to fold down the seats and make room for more. And on that note, this now wraps up our review and drive of the 2024 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro. And I'm sure a good few of you are probably saying that it's too big, too bulky, it might be a bit too in your face even as a TRD Pro. And $80,000 plus. That is a serious chunk of change. Why would I spend it on something that is still a body-on-frame SUV and not some unibody modern convenience like a lot of other SUVs and crossovers have become? Well, you know, in some regards, I definitely agree. Body on frame is quite a bit old school, but I like that. I like the fact that Toyota has kept that older flavor in the sport utility formula. And yes, I know over $80,000 is a huge chunk of money, but then again, this is a huge vehicle, so you definitely are getting quite a lot of vehicle for your dollar. But if you guys have enjoyed learning stuff or even seeing the new Sequoia here for the first time, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, without Toyota USA support and lending me vehicles for you guys to see on camera, and without all of you stopping by the channel for the first time or returning time and time again, things like this, I mean, it's still just, I can't get my brain around it. But in the end of it, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.